So where does this leave the government tonight? We gathered the At Issue gang for a special Wednesday night edition. Chantal Lebert is in Montreal, Andrew Coyne in Toronto, and Althea Raj is in Ottawa tonight. So all of us were sitting there, whether in person, as you were, Althea, or the rest of us watching on television, didn't move for more than 3.5 hours. And Chantal, let me begin with you. What was the headline from what you saw today?
A terrible day for the government, probably worse even if they were bracing for a bad day. And what I found most striking about the detailed testimony of the former Attorney General is how she took pains to place the Prime Minister at the center of the action.
Andrew?
It was credible. This wasn't just he said, she said. This is backed by contemporaneous notes, verbatim text messages, and it was much more than just an individual minister or official giving her an ambiguous remark. This appeared to be much of the senior stratus of the government, not just involving jobs, but explicitly on partisan basis. I cannot think how it could be more damning. And the Prime Minister's response that, well, I just disagree, is really not much of a response at this point. This is an absolutely extraordinary attack on the government, and they have yet to come up with a serious response. And
Althea, the headline for you?
Well, it was obviously a very bad day for the government, but there's a couple of unanswered questions that her testimony brought forward, and I think that there are certain things that have become very, very clear. Number one, the government has no idea how to handle Jody Wilson-Raybould, and this has turned into a weird game of chicken.
So a lot of people, I'm sure, wondering what the political impact of this testimony might be, and no one knows for sure. It's only been a matter of a few hours, and I guess it plays differently in different parts of the country. So Chantal, on this, I'd also like to start with you. What's your prediction of what the impact will be?
Oh, I think the government today saw any chance that this is going to go away before the next election fade into the distance. Yes, there are differences of opinion on whether the government should have intervened to get SNC-Lavalin off the hook of a criminal trial. But the issue today is different, and it is sustained pressure on the Attorney General to do something once a decision is taken. So that frame will not help Mr. Trudeau anywhere in the country. He's got to hope, if he throws himself at the mercy of voters, that they will decide that it still makes him someone that they can re-elect as Prime Minister.
You know, Andrew, on the one hand, I wonder if maybe this is, could this be only a couple more days of bad headlines? On the other hand, this story keeps on surprising us. It has for the last 10 days or so. What's your sense of that?
My sense is that we need to hear a whole bunch of people testify under oath about this, from chiefs of staff to cabinet ministers to certainly a lot of the people in the Prime Minister's office. So until and unless we hear from them, this certainly isn't going away from it. And I absolutely agree that the Prime Minister is at the center of this. Look, there was a culture revealed here, if you believe the former Attorney General's testimony, a culture that the whole rule of law in this respect was basically an obstacle to be got around, not something to be respected, and likewise that her position as the Attorney General should be treated in the same way. That culture appears, certainly the Prime Minister seems to be involved in it, and the culture is set by the guy at the top. So there are a lot of questions still to be answered.
I know there were partisan comments being made by the members of the Justice Committee, Althea, but I think it was Charlie Angus who said this wasn't a show of politics in that hearing. It was a show of integrity by Wilson-Raybould. And I wonder what your reaction was to how, I was going to say how she performed, but maybe that word is too trite, what her testimony was like today.
Well, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. The whole issue is about credibility. Now, who has more credibility, the Prime Minister or Jody Wilson-Raybould? And this speaks to, a lot of people voted for Justin Trudeau because they thought that he was going to do politics differently. And the story that Jody Wilson-Raybould told today, the pains she took to illustrate it, suggests that Justin Trudeau's government is just like any other government, that has had the pleasure to serve Canadians, in the sense that they make decisions for partisan reasons, and that's what she suggested was very improper.
So we sit there and we watch 3.5 hours, a little bit more than 3.5 hours of powerful testimony. But I assume a lot of Canadians don't have that luxury. So they may see 1 or 2 clips from Wilson-Raybould on the news, or a couple of quotes in the paper, and then they'll see the Prime Minister who spoke tonight and seemed so calm and so confident. And Chantal, do you think in that kind of balance of one clip against another, it may not be as damaging?
What hurts Mr. Trudeau on this and makes his strategy probably not to the level that he needs is the fact that she is one of his own. This is friendly fire. And for that reason, I don't think I've ever seen, Andrew and Althea can correct me if they remember anything like this, but I rarely seen someone who is still in caucus, a former minister, turn around and do as much damage to the credibility of the Prime Minister as she has. So people will look at Jody Wilson-Raybould, they will say, well, you know, this is a Liberal, this isn't a partisan attack on her part, and it's going to be harder for the Prime Minister to win this case. You've seen the polls. At this point, few people were already inclined to believe that Justin Trudeau had done no wrong. I don't think those numbers are going to flip his way after this.
I know this is subjective, but it struck me that Wilson-Raybould was thoughtful, she was measured, and sometimes her pauses spoke louder than her words. Let's listen to another excerpt from the testimony.
Do you have confidence in the Prime Minister today?
I resigned from Cabinet because I did not have confidence to sit around the table, the Cabinet table. That's why I resigned.
And my question wouldn't be why you did resign. My question would be, why didn't you resign before?
And so there was a pause at that point. Andrew, why do you think she was hesitant to? I mean, she wants to remain a member of the Liberal caucus, but on the other hand, she didn't seem to be quick to articulate her confidence in the Prime Minister.
Yeah, and with respect, I'm not sure that's the question we really, I mean, there was a lot of questions to the Prime Minister today of, you know, how will you punish her? The question that needs to be answered here is, do we have a government that respects the rule of law? There have been serious accusations made now by the former Minister of Justice and Attorney General in that government. Accusations backed up, as I say, by contemporaneous notes and other evidence that we've yet to see anything to the contrary from the other side of this question. I think that is the question that should be on everyone's minds here is, why the defense now has to be she's basically making this all up, that she's lying through her teeth. I don't see any reason why she would be. I think there's more reason to suspect that the people rebutting her are, and I think we really need to get to the bottom of this.
But how would they prove that they are telling the truth and that she's not?
Well,
I get
I'd
your
like
point.
to see them start offering some evidence.
I suspect that they will stonewall now.
But, you know, Andrew, I think you make a really good point. Althea, I'll go to you on this. Like, we talk about political implications. This is a political story. And as, you know, Wilson-Raybould herself says, she doesn't think anything illegal happened. But as you suggest, Andrew, this speaks to kind of one of the fundamental principles of how an Attorney General ought to be able to do her job or his job, which is to be free of political interference. So, Althea, speak to that kind of core issue for a moment.
Well, I think it's possible that both sides are correct. I mean, they both think that what they've and how they acted was appropriate. She did not provide any indication about why she felt a DPA was inappropriate or who she consulted to come up to that conclusion, but she obviously felt very strongly that she had communicated to the government that she did not want to do this. She talked about being hounded by the government for months, even veiled threats from the clerk of the Privy Council. The government, from its side, and in Jody Wilson-Raybould's telling of the story, did not obviously think that her decision was final and was trying to find ways to allow her or let her come to their side to intervene. Because at the end of the day, she's the one who is responsible publicly for intervening in this case. She didn't want to, so they were trying to find a way to give her cover. Oh, you could get a legal opinion. Oh, we're going to get some stakeholders to write friendly op-eds saying that what you're doing is correct. It's possible that both telling of the stories are accurate. It's just where is the line drawn? I'm not a lawyer. I don't think this is illegal, what the government did, but is it appropriate? It doesn't seem so.
If there was one conversation with one official about the problems with jobs, then we'd have maybe a gray area. When you've got so many people for so long in defiance of her repeated objections that my decision is final, explicitly invoking, as she tells it, partisan considerations, we're way, way over the line.
And Wilson-Raybould says it's not just the repeated references to jobs, it's also the fact that the Quebec election, the provincial election, and, you know, political considerations as well. We have literally, Chantal, 30 seconds, the last word to you.
Okay. I don't think the Quebec election was a factor. If you look at the timeline, the vote was on October 1st, but I think the upcoming federal election, if SNC-Lavalin were to move out to London or wherever, would have profound consequences for the Liberals and Justin Trudeau in Quebec.
All right. Well, thanks to all three of you. I know you're busy, and we appreciate your analysis tonight. And At Issue, we'll be back tomorrow for our regular Thursday panel. And we do want to hear from you. So send us your questions on SNC-Lavalin, tweet us at CBC The National, or send us a message on Facebook.